I've got a very special guest here at Rincker Law. I have Ramona Sullivan, who, as I understand, is running for judge. Can you tell us a little bit more about your judicial candidacy?
Sure. The spot that I'm running for right now, that's about to be on the ballot, early voting starts February 6th. So the spot that you'll see my name on the ballot for, if you're voting in Champaign County, is the Champaign County Resident Circuit Judge. It's the spot that used to belong to Michael Jones. He retired in 2018, and that spot is now on the ballot for election.
So tell us about you. Where are you from originally?
From Edgar County. I grew up on a small family farm between Brockton and Redmond, which you've probably not seen. Went to Shiloh High School. It's a K through 12 school. I went there K through 12, and then went to the U of I for undergrad and the U of I for law school.
Got it. And did you just stick around here after law school?
Ish.
Right.
I've always been in the 217 area code, but right after law school, my first job was at the legal aid office in Decatur. So I lived in Decatur for about 5 years.
What were you doing there at legal aid?
So I was at the place that I worked for about 14 years of my life so far. It was a place called Land of Lincoln Legal. It used to be called Land of Lincoln Legal Assistant. They have recently changed the name to Land of Lincoln Legal Aid, which sounds better. So I like it, but I still think of it as what it was when I worked there. So I worked there. There used to be a Decatur office. The Decatur office served Macon, Moultrie, Shelby, DeWitt, and Piatt counties. Way back then, we're talking about 1996, just so we're clear. So it served those counties back then. And I would do family law, a lot of domestic violence work, a lot of housing law, eviction defense, small claims defense, administrative law like disability applications and public assistance and food stamps. And if you do a lot of work with with public benefits, you'll know that they change the acronyms and the words for those every couple of minutes. So, but yeah, all of that sort of thing. I did a lot of public assistance work at Land of Lincoln back then. I worked there until my first husband died when we were really young, and I didn't have any people in Decatur, and I was about to deliver a baby, and I had a 5-year-old. You need people if you're going to have a 5-year-old and a baby and not have your husband alive. So I moved back to Champaign County back then, winter of 2000.
So what happened with your first husband? I know that I saw a Facebook post about how you think a lot about giving blood now, and I was just curious. I didn't know the background on that.
Yeah, well, he had it's just a condition we didn't know he had. It's called Marfan syndrome. It's a genetic condition that lots of people have, and lots of people don't know that they have it. Unfortunately, that's how it kills them. So with Marfan syndrome, have you ever heard of Marfan syndrome?
I have never heard of it.
Okay. I bet most of the people in the world have not, unless they have it or they love someone who has it. So it's a connective tissue disorder. And what it does in your connective tissue is all of your body parts that are made up of connective tissue sort of weaken and fall apart. And the part of that kills you, and you don't know that it's happening because it's inside of you, is the cardiovascular part. So at the point when he was diagnosed, he was 26. He had developed aneurysms and tears all over his aorta, descending, ascending. This is a super depressing thing to talk about, but it's important. People should know about Marfan syndrome. Yeah. So he also had congestive heart failure at that point. He needed a heart transplant. He needed all kinds of surgeries, and he had all kinds of surgeries, and they were amazing, and they saved and extended and prolonged his life, which is how I got a lot more invested in blood donation, because I've spent a lot of time at hospitals with people who would die without new blood and new organs and things like that. But then he ultimately did succumb to all of those impossible problems.
Yeah, that just reminded me, because I don't give blood as much as I need to. So how has that experience sort of strengthened you and where you are today and now running for judge?
There's a lot of pieces to that. Like strengthen you personally is, I would not have ever become the person that I am today without those experiences. I was a lovely person. There was nothing wrong with me, but I was pretty dependent on him for a lot of things. I was just not, I didn't know how strong I was. I guess we'll just say it that way. And it turns out I was incredibly strong. I raised all by my little self 2 amazing kids. The oldest one is now, he graduated from the Illinois Math and Science Academy in Aurora. He graduated from the University of Illinois. He's doing great. He's a great kid, and I did that. My daughter, that was born right after my husband died, graduated from University High School here in Urbana. She's now at the University of Illinois. She's amazing.
You live in Urbana now?
We live in Savoy right now.
You live in Savoy.
Because I remarried and we had a surprise baby and we didn't still fit in our other house. So we now live in Savoy, and it's lovely.
So after those 5 years in Decatur, did you come to Champaign-Urbana community immediately after that?
Yes. And I was still working for Land of Lincoln at that point in the Champaign office. The grant that I had at that time was solely domestic violence work. So I could only do jobs for people who were at least perceive themselves to be domestic violence victims. We don't like run out with cameras and try to prove that, but most people aren't claiming to be domestic violence victims if they're not. So all of the work that I did on that grant for 2 years was domestic violence work. So primarily orders of protection, custody, paternity, divorce, child support, but then a lot of other issues too, because when you're a domestic violence victim, that doesn't just affect your family. It affects oftentimes your job, oftentimes your housing, your ability to get public assistance benefits, things like that.
What do you think the legal community could do or the judicial system to do to help victims of domestic violence?
Another gigantic question. Just so many things. Number one is just to believe people, not to make it, believing people, being aware that this is a real thing. You do a lot of domestic violence work.
I do, but I'm gonna challenge you on that because I also have represented not always men, but stereotypically men who they believe that are being falsely accused. And, I sometimes have to tell them, like, listen, sometimes, you're not innocent until proven guilty in these types of things. You kind of have to prove that you didn't do it. And so there's another side to that story. So I don't know. I'm interested in your perspective on how to help the truth come out.
I've also been a public defender for 8 years in Champaign County. So I've represented thousands and thousands of people from every angle of a domestic violence situation. I represent the kids in abuse and neglect court. I represent people in delinquency court who have now had a lot of effects of living in a home with domestic violence. I represent defendants who are accused of domestic battery and all the related kinds of crimes that come out of domestic violence. It's not just domestic battery. There's kidnappings. There's lots of sexual assaults. There's lots of stalking and so many things that people do to each other when they're trying to control each other. So I certainly agree with you that it is not always true that because somebody says something that makes it true. It does not make it true. Yeah. But a lot of times, way more often than not, it is true. There's not a lot of incentive to make up a story and put yourself through a court process. There's just not a lot of reason to do that. Occasionally in family court, I think there might be. Occasionally in family court, somebody thinks they might get an advantage. You can kick somebody out of a house really fast with very little evidence in an order of protection. And then that might help you to keep the kids or to keep the house or whatever. But
so how long have you been at the public defender's office here in town?
Altogether, a little over 8 years, but in circles. My whole career has been very circular. I did the first lots of time at Land of Lincoln, legal assistance, and then a federal funding kind of eliminated my job in 2002. So then I went to the public defender's office, and I was there about 4 years the first time. As my oldest child was getting into middle school, it wasn't working. The public middle school here, not blaming anybody for anything, but he was not safe where he was. And I didn't find a solution to that here, so we just moved. We just moved back to Edgar County. I became a private attorney for a couple of years because the primary thing you have to do, especially if you're a single parent, is protect your children. Yeah. So, it didn't really matter to me where I was so much or what legal job I was doing as long as I was helping the community and protecting my kids. So we moved back to Edgar County where I was a private lawyer for a little while. The kids went to school in Edgar County. Ultimately, I had a chance to go back to Land of Lincoln from still working and living in Edgar County because we got a rural grant that allowed me to help people, mostly elderly people, with senior services and just trying to connect the people that weren't coming through and getting legal help that they needed just because of transportation is so hard to get from, where I lived in Edgar County on a farm to the nearest legal aid office is pretty far away. So we had a really special grant that I was very excited to go back to Land of Lincoln and work there. And then I remarried And he lived in Champaign, and my oldest was going to school in Aurora, so it made a lot more sense to move back to Champaign and live here.
Part of you miss Champaign, Urbana?
Oh, I mean, I love Champaign. I also love Edgar. I also love Decatur. I love pretty much everywhere and everything. But I was very happy to come back, and I worked with Land of Lincoln again here, which was wonderful. Then we had our surprise baby. What you may or may not know about Land of Lincoln is that when you're working there, you serve gigantic territories. So I was serving a 14-county territory, and I had a new baby. And so I might be in court in Crawford County or in Effingham or anywhere when he had a fever at daycare. And I'm like, I don't want to be in Crawford County when my baby's got a fever in Champaign. So I called... at the time, Randy Rosenbaum was still the public defender, and I called and I said, I'm going to need to get a local job again. I'm thinking about using you as a reference so I can just find a local job that's not Land of Lincoln going all over the place. And he had an opening, so I went back to the public defender's office. And that was 4 years and some change ago.
So how has it been for you to be basically a working attorney parent and juggling that career in addition to a family?
I've never done it any other way. My first child was born when we were in law school. So by the time I was a lawyer, I was already also a parent. So, I mean, I assume that it's easier for the other people who don't have kids to take care of, but I have no idea because I've never lived that way. I've always had kids.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have kids too. They're just goats, but
they need attention.
So the $1 million question is, why are you running for judge?
Okay, so last time I've been applying for judicial vacancies now, almost every vacancy that is selected by appointment. I've been applying for almost every vacancy since 2012 because I sincerely believe with all my heart that we need a person exactly like me on the bench. I've been appearing in court for 23 years all over Central Illinois. I've been in court almost every day. We need judges who have a tremendous amount of experience working with the poor. The poor are who are brought to court all day long. Those are the people that fill the courtrooms all day, every day, and they're 99% of the time trying to communicate with and being judged by people who have had no experience whatsoever working with them. None. They don't understand and I don't mean this in any way to be negative about folks who don't know what they don't know. Like, I don't know what it would be like to be a lawyer without kids. I don't know. People who have never been poor, who have never struggled to catch the right bus to get to the right place at the right time and find out there's a warrant because they were 10 minutes late. People who have never either A, lived that life, or B, been fully immersed in that life, helping the folks who live there. They don't understand.
So how do you think that your experiences in dealing with that portion of the population, the poorer population, would help you on the bench?
It would help it would help everyone in the courthouse to have people like me on the bench, to have people who are very, very firm, very fair, but also flexible enough to make sure that you're actually being fair. Folks who can, say, I'll have my stay-at-home spouse take care of the kids, so I'm not going to be late for court. That's wonderful. A lot of people don't have a stay-at-home spouse to take care of the kids. So a lot of people, and I lived this life for 10 years, being the person who had to get everywhere on time, get my kids everywhere on time, make sure my kids were provided for if I had to be somewhere else. Those are the people that are brought to court for financial reasons, for family reasons, for all the reasons. Those are the people in court, and we do not accommodate them at all.
Is there a judge or judges that you particularly admire?
There are lots of judges that I admire. Sure.
Do you want to name any names or say the qualities that you admire in other judges?
The qualities that I admire, I really, really appreciate the judges who never give you the impression that they're predisposed to anything. I really very much appreciate the judges who you can see are listening to all of the facts, or listening to all of the evidence, and are making up their mind after that's all been presented. I very much appreciate that, and you don't always get that. I appreciate the people who are accommodating, who you can say, a lawyer can say to the judge, my client called in the bus is late, or they had a flat tire, or they missed their ride, or their child has a fever or whatever. And they will allow for accommodations. They will say, you know, well, what's going to work best for them? Do you just want to wait 15 minutes, or do you want to reset it for the afternoon, or do you want to, because there's no harm to anybody who works in that building to accommodate the other people. We're all there, you know, every day, all day anyway. There's just no reason not to accommodate them. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people feel as if their courtroom is their courtroom, that it's not the courtroom for the public, that it's theirs, and people are there at their convenience.
Well, so what do you think are, besides your empathy for the poor, what do you think are your biggest strengths and qualities that you could bring to the bench?
I don't think there's any other, honestly, lawyer who has comparable experiences to the ones that I have. There are lots and lots of very good civil legal aid attorneys who have been fully immersed in civil legal aid. None of them have done criminal work. None of them have been at the public defender's office, or very few of them have been in private practice either. There are lots of good prosecutors who don't see or understand or appreciate the other side. There are lots of good private attorneys who don't have experience working with the poor. I don't think there's anybody else who has the kind of volume or years, depth, breadth of experience with domestic violence issues that I do. There are a lot of people who help advocate for victims. There are a lot of people who help defend the accused. I'm unaware of anyone else who's done literally thousands of cases for all the people from all the sides. It doesn't give me like a crystal ball where I can predict the future, or where I have like some kind of truth serum and I know for certain who's telling the truth, but I am a lot closer than almost anybody else to being able to figure out, in this scenario, what probably really happened.
So if you're elected, what do you foresee would be the biggest challenges that you might have while being on the bench?
The same ones that everybody else has. I mean, I could be thrown into a courtroom that I don't have experience with. I don't have experience with the big money cases. I've never been involved in the big money cases. But other than that, I've been involved in, and I don't just mean involved in, I mean fully immersed in, you know, years, all day, every day, in criminal defense for adults, years-long assignments in abuse and neglect, years-long assignments in delinquency, years-long assignments in domestic violence, years-long, you know. So I don't think there's a huge learning curve for me on going to the bench.
So I know this is your second time running, right? Can you tell me about your previous campaign? What were your biggest lessons that you possibly learned from that you're taking with you now to this campaign?
Yeah, well, you're reminding me I never answered your last question. I keep getting off on tangents. But the reason that I ran the first time was, even though I apply for judicial vacancies all the time, and usually they do bar association polls where lawyers sort of rate you, and I always score very highly on those polls, and I'm always rated very qualified and recommended. I never get really considered. I rarely even get an interview for those positions. And I sort of looked at what maybe some of those factors were, and that's when I realized, this was in the summer of 2017, I realized that all of the people making those decisions were Republicans. Like 14 out of 14 of our circuit judges were, and still are, Republicans. 14 out of 14 in a 6-county circuit that includes Champaign County. So I thought, how's that possible? How did this happen? So I'm looking back and realized that there hadn't even been a Democrat that had bothered to run in Champaign County since 2000, circuit-wide since 1996. So it had been a really long time since voters had any say in this at all. And I just decided there's a vacancy coming up there's going to be a vacancy on the ballot, and I'm running for it. I didn't think I had any chance at all of winning it, because I did the math on the 6-county circuit is very Republican. Champaign is really the only one that isn't. So I didn't think I had a chance to win, but I thought I can take this platform and I can educate the public. I can tell the public what judges do, why this is important. I can tell the public why I think we need balance on our bench, why I think we should have somebody that's not a Republican. We should have at least one person that has children, that's a mother. We should have maybe somebody that's got non-white children. We should have somebody who's worked with the poor. We should have more than one perspective on our bench. So I spent all that time, from I started running in July of 2017, in all 6 counties, telling everyone I could from the rooftops, shouting it out, this matters, this matters, this matters. And then I almost won. Like, to the point that all of the news agencies reported that I did.
Wow.
To the point that here we are in 2020 and I still knock on doors and people say, I was so excited when you won the election. And I say, I didn't win the election. I didn't win. But I'm really excited that you knew about it. You remember me.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. So people, it turned out, particularly in Champaign County, were listening. And they wanted to have some changes on the bench. In 2018, we had in Champaign County, you may have heard about this thing, this blue wave thing.
I was going to ask you about the blue wave. There's been like rumblings about it.
The blue wave. So that's what they referred to, that all of the Democrats basically swept Champaign County. So all of these people won in Champaign County and are now elected officials. Mm-hmm. And I had more votes than all of them. I was the highest vote getter in Champaign County other than our 3 statewide incumbents. And I didn't win, because I had the 5 other counties. So initially when I started that run in 2018, it really wasn't to win.
But why are judgeships, why should it even really matter what party somebody is?
Yeah, so it shouldn't. And if it didn't, how in the world are they all Republican? It shouldn't, but they're all by appointment, and they're always appointing Republicans. So
how important do you think it is for people to get involved and get to know local candidates, whether or not people are running for judge or just other elected officials?
I mean, it's important. But it's also kind of a privilege. It's kind of a thing only people can do. I don't know how to say this in the right way. I was not at all an informed voter for years, because I didn't have the time or the energy to come up for air from my real life. My real life was, I have a full-time job, I have kids, I'm really busy, and that's not on my radar. And most people in our community, I think, are in that sphere where I was.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like blame people if you're not an informed voter. Well, if you don't have a reason why you're not coming up for air, then you should be an informed voter. You know, if you're an educated person, if you've got a safe, stable home, if you've got transportation, if you've got your bills being paid every month, if you're not stressed out day to day on how you're going to meet your obligations, you have no reason to not be an informed voter.
Do you know what the recent statistics are about people that come up for local primary elections? Because last time I knew, and perhaps I'm misquoting this statistic, but it was something small, like 5 to 6% of the population. I have no idea what the current statistics are on that. Do you have any idea?
I don't. It depends on the election. I mean, in 2020, it's going to be a presidential election. I think in November of 2020, there's going to be a tremendous voter turnout. I think.
How do you think that people that are on the bench can impact the community for people that have nothing to do with the court system whatsoever? Because it's easy for us, we're 2 lawyers having this conversation, but a vast majority of the population has never entered into the courthouse, have never been involved in a legal proceeding. So how could you on the bench impact their lives?
The judges are impacting all of our lives, whether we know it or not. Our court system impacts everybody's life. The judges in particular. Do you do any criminal law at all?
Oh gosh, no. I'll leave that to you.
Well, the judges decide who sits in custody before a trial. The judges decide if they have to post money to get out, how much. The judges decide who's sitting there. The judges decide if you get convicted, how long you might be sitting in custody or what the terms of your sentence are. And I mean, maybe if you're not really thinking it through, that only appears to affect the people that are involved in that court case. But of course, it affects their families and their landlords and their employers and their neighbors. And it affects, all of these things affect all of the people that are around the people that are going to court. Judges decide, for example, in pretrial situations, there's often a bond. Whether you have to post money or not, you're often on some type of a bond with conditions. And judges decide what those conditions are. So often in family law cases, or not even family law cases, just in a case where someone's accused of some type of a battery, for a push, a spit, a kick, or whatever. So you're accused of some type of a physical offense. Judges will issue no contact orders. Sometimes they will issue GPS orders. And that also affects everyone. Very often these no contact orders are things that literally nobody wants. Nobody at all wants it, and it's really disrupting their lives because they didn't have an ability to pay for 2 rents. They don't have some other child care provider if that person's not allowed in the home. It really does just make a nightmare for a lot of people. And I wouldn't do that for no reason. I would issue no contact orders if that was appropriate. I would issue no contact orders if that's what the victim was asking for and wanted and it was going to help them. But I wouldn't just issue them out of the box for no reason. There's the statute says there's supposed to be a 72-hour sort of cooling off stay away period. And for the vast majority of people, that's really all they needed. They just needed to cool off. But then the way that we set up our system is we have these no contact orders. So either you're going to follow the law and really mess your life up by going into extra debt for extra things you didn't have, or you're going to completely violate the no contact order and probably get arrested again for a new offense for violating a bond condition. So yeah, there's a lot of things.
So I told you about 6 or 7 months ago that I had a client of mine who was from in or around Edgar County, so now I'm understanding how he knew you, who told me that you are the most ethical attorney that I try to not be insulted by that, but regardless, what do you think, what qualities do you think that you possess that would have others say, Ramona Sullivan, she is an ethical attorney?
I try very hard, really, to be thoughtful and only say things if I know for a fact that they're true. I would never deliberately mislead anyone, but in addition to that, I try, especially in this world of fake news and everybody sharing things that were obviously never true from the get-go, but now they've been shared a million times. I really, really try carefully to make sure any information that anybody gets from me is 100% true. I think that's what every lawyer should do. Certainly think that's what every judge should do. I don't know who that person was or why they feel that way, but that is the way that I've conducted my life literally since I was born. I care about people having good information. I care about people getting good advice. I care about people not suffering any more than they need to, and I think that's been pretty clear my whole life.
And why do you think that's an important quality for somebody who's going to be on the bench? Ethics.
For real. You have to believe when you leave a courtroom after you've been in court lots of times. And oftentimes one of the people usually both of the people that are leaving are very unhappy and dissatisfied with the result. But always at least one person did not get the result that they were hoping for. They have to leave knowing that judge didn't make a decision for any improper reason. They have to leave knowing that judge actually listened, followed the law, was fair. They have to leave that courtroom feeling like the issue has been appropriately resolved, whether they got what they wanted or not. That is the only way anybody can get closure and start healing and move on with their lives.
So I have a client that has a lot of distrust right now in the legal community. He distrusts lawyers. He distrusts judges. What would you say to that person?
So I've represented probably 9,000 of those people. And what I start by not saying. I start by listening. I start by trying to find out what is it exactly that either you're not... The biggest thing for lawyers and judges, I think, is communication. It's making sure that you actually are understanding what the other person is trying to say, what they're trying to relay to you, what their goals are. You have to understand why they're there. They came to the lawyer or the judge for a reason, and it's our obligation to figure out what that was. We also then have an obligation to make sure that they understand what we are saying and that we get it at a level that they can understand, that we meet them where they are. So for whoever the person is that's distressed, the starting point for me is just asking more questions until I understand. And then we, there's the occasional, the other day I made some joke with somebody that 1 out of 10,000 people can't communicate with me. But it's not very many. We do really well because that's my goal. My goal is to hear you. My goal is to hear you and make sure you know you are heard. So,
and talk a little bit more about your campaign, and then we'll wrap things up, Ramona. So, not only are you a public defender while being a working parent, but you're now running this campaign. How are you doing it all, and what have been the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for the first 18 months, which has come and gone a long time ago, I just had all the adrenaline. I had all this adrenaline. I was excited. I was doing the right thing. I was really excited, and I wasn't getting tired at all. That ship has sailed. like the adrenaline is pretty much, I don't know what the limit for most people is, but I have reached my not getting tired limit. So you can see the eyes. I have billboards up now, and people are like, "Oh, is that you?" I'm like, "That was me 2 years ago. That was me before." So the true answer to your question is, I am doing it because it's the right thing to do. I'm not dropping any balls. But I am getting bags under my eyes. So.
What have been the biggest surprises from your campaign?
I mean, I was really, let's be honest, shocked at how many votes I got in Champaign County in 2018. As everyone in the country, that's not true. That's an exaggeration. But I have friends all over the country who were texting me, their screenshots of how their news agency had reported that I'd won. So they're congratulating me because I won. And I'm like, that's not true. It's not true. But I'm like watching these numbers come in, and I just couldn't believe it. I I got more votes than JB. I got more votes than Kwame. I got more votes than all of our elected officials locally. I was very surprised. And I think I connected with a lot of people. A lot of people went out to vote specifically because they heard what I said. They were voting for me. And that brought along a few other people with me.
So I know we're approaching the primaries.
Yes.
Where can people meet you and here in the last few months here as you go into the primary election?
Well, and I don't want them to just meet me. I mean, because this time now that it looks like Democrats are going to be strong in Champaign, all the Democrats are running for judge. So it's a good problem to have. The voters actually do have some options. So voters can see me. The three other people that are running in the Democratic primary are Ruth Wyman, Troy Lozar, and David Moore. We will all be attending and participating in a candidate forum that the League of Women Voters and NAACP and the News Gazette are hosting. That's on January 30th at the Champaign City Building. I think it'll be on TV too if people can't come in person, but I would definitely start there. You want to know who these people are, you want to know who your options are, and you want to vote for the one that you think both best represents what you want on the seat. So I would definitely encourage people to either come to that forum or watch that forum. I'm hoping that the East Central Illinois Women Attorneys Association will also do a forum. They reached out saying they were hoping to, but I don't have a date yet from that. But the more you can see all the people, so you can make an informed decision, the better. You can also, Google us, see what we've been doing for our lifetimes. You're going to find 23 years worth of me fighting for access to justice for the poor. That's what I've been doing. If
somebody wanted to get involved in your campaign and help out, what roles could they play and how would they contact you? Sure.
Well, I have a Facebook page that's very easy to find. So you go to my Facebook page, message the Facebook page, and we would certainly hook you up. The website is really so basic. The website was just because I was running for judge 2 years ago, and I asked somebody, would you make me a very basic website that would feed into a Facebook page? So that's all it is. So there's not a lot to see there. But you can email me. You can go visit the Facebook page. Things that volunteers could do if they want to get involved are, number one, vote. Number two, tell your friends and your family that there is a primary election that's coming up. The primary is March 17th. Early voting starts February 6th. We will certainly have opportunities for folks that want to help us knocking on doors, making phone calls, little postcard parties to send reminders to folks. All those things are coming up in the next, obviously, very short time. There's lots of things people can do, but the most important thing is just vote.
Let's close with what's your website address and any email or phone number that you want to
give. The website is ramonasullivan.com. And all it will do is feed you into the Facebook page, and then just message that. That's the easiest way.
Well, thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely to get to know you better and your candidacy.
Thank you.